Hey everybody. Today I want to talk about backstory. Why backstory? Because I just saw an episode of Penny Dreadful where they do two things really right about backstory, and because backstory is hard as hell to get right. That's speaking personally from my own writing and from shit that I have read. People fuck up backstory a lot. We writers do that. It's been hard for me to learn. So these are some things that I have learned. I'm not an expert. But okay, for those of you who watch Penny Dreadful, something that is remarkable about it is that it is basically retelling several different gothic classic horror stories, combining all the characters but doing it in a way that brings them to life in a new way. I mean, imagine a vampire show in this day and age and it's still original. That's an impressive feat unto itself. What they do with backstory is that throughout the first 4 episodes, you just get these hints and sort of, you can tell from little conversations and snippets and not even flashbacks, but very small things that happen. You get the sense that something really fucked up has happened in the past between two of the main characters, but you don't really know what. Eventually, so then we come to episode 5. Episode 5, the entire episode is backstory. So they spend, a full episode basically talking about what happened to Miss Ives, why she's so fucked up, what's her relationship with Mina Harker's father, and all these things that are going on between them. And it plays out like a true gothic mess in every sense of the word. Now, what's right about that? Here's the two things that I think that we miss a lot. One is backstory comes later. You can't start out a story with backstory because it's not the story. It's, by definition, it's shit that already happened. So it's not happening. This is one mistake that I have made. I will try to start a story, and in doing that, in order to give life to the characters, create the context, do the world building work, whatever, what have you, I will really try to get some of that backstory in there, and I will try to force it in. And it comes across as stilted because the action is, every time you dip into backstory, the action isn't moving forward. And for that to happen early on in the story, your reader or your viewer is just like moving forward, and then you don't know what's happening. So that's thing number one. They waited a full 5 episodes, and they enticed us with information. So it didn't feel forced when suddenly there was this big backstory. We knew that something had gone down, and you want to know what, but it isn't essential to the plot moving forward early on. We can live without it. So it provides two functions of enticing us, and then also it doesn't hold things up. And then we get to it. Now, thing number 2 is they tell a full story. The backstory is a story unto itself. It's not just a backstory. And they allowed to do that because they took the time to actually give it a full, like I said, a full episode. Instead of just kind of brushing it off in like 2 or 3 flashback scenes, which you can do. But what was clear was that they developed that story thoroughly. That was its own story. It had a beginning, a middle, and end. It had meaning, it had depth, it had layers, it had all these things that a good story needs. And so they said, this is the backstory, but we will treat it with the respect that any story would get. So you have a set, the characters are developed, even the characters that don't show up except then, they give it full breadth and respect. What's another show that does that? To me, Breaking Bad does an amazing job with backstory. And for very different reasons. They do wait until much deeper into the show itself before they start giving you these little snippets. But what I love that they do, this is almost world building and backstory at the same time because they are similar. When they use those little, I know there's a technical term for them, but they use those little pre-show moments before the credits roll. Some TV person come in with the name. And they just show like a music video, a ranchera narco corrido about Mr. White. Or they show a moment from 10 years back when the characters are interacting and some object that shows up later comes into play in a very small way. And so it's like you get these little moments, and they're sort of meaningless little moments, except in the context of the larger show and you caring about what's going on with the characters. but they also tell you a lot about the characters and where they've come from and what their growth has been, what their arc has been, and all these things. Okay, so those are two examples of backstory working. I'll tell you from my own shit, backstory that hasn't worked. When I'm trying to write, like I said, I will try to throw in backstory. There was some stuff with Shadow Shaper where and no one's ready yet, but where I kept having the main character, Sierra, I would start a week into when everything weird started happening. So in the first scene, she would go, I mean, when I tell you draft after draft of this, for some reason I thought that this was okay. She would go, man, it had already been such a weird week. This had happened, and this crazy shit had gone down, and this thing, and now this is happening. Why the fuck don't you just start with the first crazy shit that happens? Anyway, finally I did. And so that's where I'm at. But that's to give you an example of my own process and how backstory functions. And again, I say this because it is something we all struggle with. It is never easy. And the thing that's easy to do too, the other pitfall that's easy to fall into, and then I'm done, is the info dump. Info dump happens with backstory, and it happens with world building, and it happens when magical powers are being explained. So, that's that moment where a character takes another character's side and is like, okay, here's the rules, here's everything that's happened before this, and here's everything that's going to happen. Got it? And the reader is like, really? That was stupid. That's all for today.